Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into the epic, larger-than-life story of Cyrus the Great. We're going to separate the wild ancient myths from the astonishing historical realities of the guy who actually founded the Achaemenid Empire. We're looking at a figure whose reign was absolutely crucial in defining world history. He literally shaped both Eastern and Western civilizations for millennia. Let's kick things off by looking at his official royal title: the Great King, King of Persia, King of Anshan, King of Media, King of Babylon, King of Sumer and Akkad, and King of the Four Corners of the World. Okay, wow, that right there immediately establishes his absolute grandeur and the unprecedented scale of his power. And the craziest part, it wasn't just an empty boast. Over the course of his reign in the 6th century BC, Cyrus systematically earned every single one of those titles, uniting a massive chunk of the ancient world under one banner.
So, this brings us to our core question for today. Who was the man behind the myth? How did one single guy build the largest empire in human history up to that point? And honestly, perhaps even more intriguingly, why is he remembered so often as a liberator, a father to his subjects, rather than just another ruthless conqueror? To figure that out, we really have to look at where he came from.
Section 1. The Mythological Shepherd King.
To truly understand the man, we have to start with the incredibly vivid, fantasy-like legends surrounding his birth. The most famous of these comes to us from the ancient Greek historian Herodotus, and let me tell you, it reads like an absolute mythic thriller. So, Cyrus's grandfather was King Astyages of the Median Empire. According to the legend, Astyages started having these terrifying prophetic dreams about his daughter, Mandane, specifically dreams involving a flood and fruit-bearing vines emerging from her. His advisors interpreted these wild visions to mean that her unborn child, his grandson, would one day rebel and completely overthrow him. So Astyages makes a dark, drastic decision. The infant Cyrus had to be killed.
He delegates this grim task to his top general, a guy named Harpagus. But Harpagus just couldn't bring himself to murder a royal baby. Instead, he secretly passes the infant off to a humble shepherd named Mithridates, whose own son had actually just been stillborn. So the shepherd raises Cyrus as his own boy, basically hiding the future king in plain sight.
But of course, a secret like that doesn't stay buried forever. By age 10, Cyrus apparently had such a naturally royal demeanor that he beat a nobleman's son for disobeying him during a game. This kind of shocking behavior from a quote-unquote shepherd boy got him dragged right before King Astyages, who pretty quickly recognized his true identity. Now, Astyages ended up sending Cyrus back to his biological parents in Persia, but he exacted a horrific and legendary revenge on his general, Harpagus. Get this, he secretly butchered Harpagus' own son and actually tricked the general into eating him at a royal banquet. It is incredibly brutal, but as you'll see, this act perfectly sets the stage for the very real rebellion that was about to pop off.
Section 2. Rise of the Achaemenids.
Now, transitioning from those bloody ancient myths into the staggering historical reality, we can trace Cyrus's incredibly rapid military and political ascent. The momentum is absolutely wild. He starts out by succeeding his father as king of Anshan in 559 BC. Then, over just 3 decades, which is a blink of an eye in historical terms, he conquers every major power in the ancient Near East. We're talking the Median Empire in 550, the Lydian Empire in 546, and the mighty Neo-Babylonian Empire in 539, vastly expanding his reach across West and Central Asia, until his death in 530 BC. So how exactly did he take down his grandfather's empire to kick this whole thing off? Well, remember that gruesome banquet from the myth we just talked about? Historically, the Median king Astyages really did attack Cyrus, but the plan backfired spectacularly. General Harpagus and a huge chunk of the Median army mutinied. They completely defected, joining forces with Cyrus to capture the capital city of Ecbatana in 550 BC. And remarkably, despite everything that went down, historical accounts suggest Cyrus actually spared his grandfather's life and seamlessly integrated the Median vassals right into his own command structure.
Moving on to Section 3. Conquest and Liberation.
Now, military might is only half the story of Cyrus the Great. Let's dig into how his revolutionary strategies made him feel like a truly modern protagonist in an incredibly ancient world. He forged this sprawling domain that stretched all the way from the Mediterranean to the Indus Valley. By absorbing Media, Lydia and Asia Minor, the Neo-Babylonian Empire, sweeping through Central Asia like Bactria and Sogdia, and claiming Elam and Susa, he literally created the largest empire history had ever seen up to that point.
But honestly, it was how he won these territories that really makes him stand out. His tactical genius was simply unmatched. Take his war against King Croesus of Lydia, for example. In the decisive Battle of Thymbra in 546 BC, Cyrus was up against a massively superior Lydian cavalry. So, acting on some clever advice, he placed his baggage dromedaries, camels, right up on the front lines in front of his warriors. The Lydian horses were completely unfamiliar with the smell and the sight of the camels. They panicked and just completely routed. Cyrus literally weaponized the scent of camels to neutralize his enemy's greatest advantage. It is brilliant. And then we have his capture of Babylon in 539 BC. Now, Babylon was famously heavily fortified. People thought it was completely impenetrable, but Cyrus's forces pulled off an absolute masterpiece of engineering. The invading forces diverted the mighty Euphrates River, dropping the water level down so low that his troops were able to literally march straight down the dry riverbed, right under the city walls at night. They took the capital almost entirely without a battle.
And here's where it gets really fascinating. After taking Babylon, he didn't just sack it in the traditional, brutal, ancient way. Instead, he left behind what we now call the Cyrus Cylinder. This was a clay cylinder placed in Babylon where he formally denounces the previous king and, more importantly, declares his own sweeping reforms. He pledged to improve the lives of citizens, repatriate displaced peoples, and restore their temples. Because of this, many historians actually view this artifact as a foundational text for human rights and a massive emblem of his totally unique policy of religious tolerance.
This policy had monumental, world-altering historical consequences. Through what is known as the Edict of Restoration, Cyrus freed the Jewish people from their long Babylonian captivity. He allowed them to return to Judah and actually rebuild their temple in Jerusalem. Think about that for a second. Unlike the standard brutality we usually see in the ancient world, he acted as a true liberator. This act was so profoundly appreciated that the Hebrew Bible's Book of Isaiah explicitly designates Cyrus as a Messiah or anointed one. He's literally the only non-Jewish figure to ever be revered in this capacity.
Section 4. Conflicting Tales of Death.
Now, for a life so remarkably well documented by his sweeping conquests and administrative decrees, the very end of his story dissolves right back into legendary mystery. How did he actually die? Well, we have this striking historical contrast. On one hand, Herodotus gives us this incredibly gory account where Cyrus is killed fighting the nomadic Massagetae. In this version, Queen Tamaris defeats his army, decapitates Cyrus, and dips his severed head in a vessel of blood purely for revenge. Wow. But then, on the other hand, the Greek writer Xenophon claims Cyrus died entirely peacefully of old age in his own capital city, surrounded by the massive empire he built. So we're basically left to weigh a brutal battlefield decapitation against a quiet, natural passing.
Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, an enduring global legacy. Because regardless of how he actually died, his impact on both Eastern and Western civilizations is absolutely undeniable. You know what's amazing? His remarkably modest tomb still stands today in Pasargadae, Iran. For a man who basically ruled the known world, it's just a simple limestone pyramid structure that has survived for millennia. It commanded such immense respect that when Alexander the Great conquered Persia centuries later, he didn't destroy it. In fact, Alexander had grown up reading about Cyrus's heroism and actively ordered his own soldiers to protect and restore the tomb. According to the ancient historian Plutarch, that tomb once bore a remarkably humble epitaph. It supposedly read, "O man, whoever you are and wherever you come from, I am Cyrus, who won the Persians their empire. Do not therefore begrudge me this bit of earth that covers my bones." It is incredibly powerful, right? It perfectly contrasts the absolute, earth-shattering power he wielded in life with his deeply human, incredibly grounded perspective in death.
So how does a ruler from 2,500 years ago still define the ultimate standard of leadership today? As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final thought. In a world defined by ruthless ancient conquerors who literally boasted about their cruelty, Cyrus the Great took a completely different path. By respecting the cultures he conquered, repatriating the displaced, and allowing religious freedom, he proved that tolerance and human rights might just be the most powerful tools of all for building a lasting legacy. Could the leaders of today learn a thing or two from a shepherd king who lived 2.5 millennia ago? I'll let you be the judge.